Welcome to Sports Cards once again. Now, in the world of sports cards, there's a lot of narratives that exist that are really nothing more than win. In this video, we're going to look at 5 of the common narratives and explore whether they're true, based on reality, or just an illusion. The first myth we're going to discuss, a lot of people say unlicensed products, like Panini's baseball product, for example, are worth less, are less valuable, less sought than licensed product. So let's dig into this. Now, I personally suspect that this is going to be completely based on the particular product. Some of the lower end product that's not as sought, something like maybe Goodwin Champions, which I personally find a little annoying, is probably not going to be as valuable, but something like Flawless, Immaculate, these kind of products from Panini that are well respected in other sports, I suspect these are going to still fetch a premium on the open market. So let's take a look at some data though and see what we can see if we compare unlicensed product to licensed product in baseball. Specifically, I think that's the best place to look here. All right, let's first take a look at Fernando Tatis Jr. Now, this card here you're looking at is his 2019 Topps Chrome PSA 10 rookie card. Now, this one is approximate value is about $200. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. We're going into a little depth about what that might mean. The next one here is the 2019 Bowman Chrome PSA 10 rookie with an approximate value of about $150. Okay, now let's compare that to some of the Panini products. This one here is the 2019 Panini Chronicles Obsidian PSA 10 rookie card, which is worth about $120. And this one here is the 2019 Panini Contenders Optic Season Ticket PSA 10 rookie card, which is approximately $120 value as well. Now, I know these ones aren't direct comparisons, but from this brief look, it looks like the Bowman's Chrome is valued at about maybe 25% higher than the unlicensed stuff, and the Topps Chrome is valued at about 75% higher. However, there's a big however here, we have to look at what is the actual cost of the product originally. So let's look at these same four products that we're looking at, the Tatis Jr. rookie card, and see, if you buy a hobby box, if they're a similar price or which one's more expensive, and see what we can see from that. All right, so the 2019 Topps Chrome hobby box goes for about $900. The 2019 Bowman Chrome hobby box goes for about half that, $450. The 2019 Panini Chronicles hobby box, which includes the Obsidian, but it also includes a ton of other stuff. It's a pretty low-end product, actually. It goes for about $180. And then the 2019 Panini Contenders Optic. So as you can see from this, even though the Topps Chrome and the Bowman Chrome cards of Fernando Tatis Jr. are much higher, their product price is also significantly higher. And actually, I would say percentage-wise, if you went per dollar value of the unlicensed stuff, I would say it actually is better bang for your buck. At least in this example. So this is just one example. I'm not saying go out and buy a bunch of unlicensed product, but I'm just looking at the data. All right, this time let's do another player. Let's look at another junior. For some reason I always seem to like the juniors. I don't know why. This is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And for this one, I kind of want to look at something a little bit more high-end, a little bit like an autograph card. So let's look at a rookie card, autograph card from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., just to see what we can see. All right, this one we're looking at here is the 2019 Topps Chrome Autograph Rookie Refractor, numbered out of 499, which is sold in a BGS 9.5 for $1,700. Also sold in SGC 10 for $1,100. And here we have the 2019 Panini Donruss Optic rated rookie autograph in a BGS 9.5, sold for about $375. And again, like we did before, let's now look at the price of the product that these cards are coming from, just to see what we can see. So once again, the 2019 Topps Chrome Hobby Box costs about $900. Then we have the 2019 Panini Donruss Optic Hobby Box Baseball, which goes for about $450. So once again, though the Topps Chrome is the top of the pile here, it's also the most expensive product. So per dollar investment, I don't know. I mean, the higher end stuff certainly costs more, is more valuable, but it was more expensive to get in the first place. So the unlicensed products, again, it doesn't seem like the fact that Panini's products are unlicensed makes a huge difference on its actual value in the open market. Now, we've only looked at a couple of players here. We could keep going into depth and see what else we could see, but I'm going to pause on this one because this is kind of starting to reinforce what I kind of already thought, which is I think unlicensed product in baseball doesn't necessarily have a lower value, but there's an asterisk on that, I think. Because on the one hand, I think there are some collectors out there who would prefer to have the licensed product. So there's maybe a few less people buying, but there's still enough people interested in the unlicensed product that I think it's still not a huge problem to sell. I also think it makes a big difference what the product is. If it's coming from a product that is well known in the hobby, but all of these are respected products, are well known products in other sports. So it's a known factor. It's not some unknown thing. Whereas, I would suspect that something in Goodwin's Champion or some other unlicensed products that are a little bit less well known. I mean, Goodwin's Champion has been around for a long time. That name has been around for a long time, but it's not as all pervasive in the hobby like something like Prism or Optic is. So I suspect that has something to do with it. Let us know in the comments below. Do you like unlicensed baseball or unlicensed other products, or do you try to shy away from those? What are your thoughts about it? All right, let's move on. Myth number 2. All right, now this one I hear all the time. This myth, whether it's true or not, let's find out, says that in football cards, the only cards worth investing in are quarterbacks. Let's see what we can see. I'm hoping that eventually I get more subscribers and start making a little bit of money, so I will actually, put that money back into subscribing into things like maybe Card Ladder or Market Movers, and we can do a little bit more of a deep dive. If I had longer term data to look at, and if you do have Market Movers or Card Ladder, what I think would be really interesting is go back, look 5-10 years ago at some of the hyped quarterbacks and some of the top, rookie running backs and wide receivers, and just see what's happened to their cards over the long term. But from what I can tell and what I do know, one thing that's very easy to see is that quarterback cards do tend to go higher. But percentage-wise, does that mean they actually increase by more? I would suggest that it's actually a bigger risk. If you have a new quarterback coming in, somebody that's hyped up big time, like current season, of course, you can see Mac Jones cards, how hyped up they are and how high that price is. Now, because of that hype, these players have an incredibly high starting value. So in order for a player like Mac Jones to just simply maintain that value in his cards, he has to basically be a GOAT kind of player. If he's even just like a lower tier all-star in his future or something like that, it's a part of the conversation, but just below a bunch of other guys, these cards are going to go down in value, even if he does quite well. So this is one reason why I say that, quarterbacks, though their cards are going to be the highest on the football market, they're not always going to be the ones that make the most increase, percentage-wise. Is it a better investment to say go for one really expensive Mac Jones card or Justin Herbert card, or is it better to go for 10 Jonathan Taylor cards? A lot of it will have to do, of course, with how that player pans out in the long term. But I think you have to look beyond the hype and see what's there, and then kind of analyze the situation, because I don't think it's so straightforward that quarterbacks are the best investments. I think if you're only wanting to go for one card and you want to make the biggest amount of profit off that one card, yeah, quarterback is going to go the highest. But a quarterback also has the potential to have the biggest drops as well. So I would actually suggest that looking into players who are skills players, who are still relevant in the conversation, top tier kind of players, by value wise, those cards won't increase as much. By percentage wise, they could. So I would suggest that quarterbacks are not the only good investment to go through in football. That being said, if you're looking for the best long-term investment that has nothing to do with prospecting, then it makes sense to go for some of the GOATs in the quarterback category. A Tom Brady, for example, would be, the Michael Jordan of the football card conversation. If you can get some Tom Brady's, you're pretty safe. Even if the market does have some drops and some of those go down here and there, his long-term relevance is established. He's going to be part of the GOAT conversation for long into the future. So that's a good investment. But you could say the same thing about somebody like, Jerry Rice. He's retired long ago, but he's still a relevant part of the conversation. Many consider him to be one of the best football players that's ever existed, and he's still very popular to this day. So some of these players, but there's very few Jerry Rice type of players in the league today. I don't know, maybe Jonathan Taylor has a chance to become that eventually if he can keep up this phenomenal play. So essentially, if I was to summarize this, I would say quarterbacks are not necessarily the only place to invest. However, they are the most likely place to make the biggest jumps, and they're the most likely place to make the biggest dips. So they're a bit of a risky investment, I would say, compared to some other positions, which will make, maybe percentage-wise, will make the same ups and downs, but the sheer dollar amount will be less. So it kind of depends on your approach, I think. All right, the next myth we're gonna explore, myth number 3, says that one-of-one cards or other extremely short printed cards like printed out of 2 or out of 5 don't sell for that much more if they're graded than if they're raw. Let's see what we can see. Now, the first time I heard this, I was actually quite surprised because in my mind, a graded card is always worth more on the market. It's just always what I see. But I kept seeing people and reading what people were saying on different forums about how this is the case. A one-of-one, if you grade it, it doesn't go up in value that much. So I started to explore why and look at what people were saying about the logic behind this. It says that because the pop count of this card is already extremely low, that if you grade it, it doesn't make it more rare than it was before because it's already as rare as it can possibly get. Whereas, for other cards, if you get it graded in a PSA 10, the pop count of that goes from however many thousands were printed down to just however many of that PSA 10. So it lowers the pop count so significantly, which raises the value. It makes the supply much lower. So for the demand that's there, the price goes up. So that's one stream of logic, because with the one-of-one, the supply doesn't change. If you grade it or if you don't grade it, the supply is still that one. So let's look at the data though and just compare, some different one-of-one cards and see, how much some of them are selling when they're raw and how much some of them are selling when they're graded, and see what we can see. Let's look at a handful of raw one-of-ones that have sold, just random ones from random players, some top players, some mid-tier players. But let's just take a look and see what we can see. CJ McCollum, Courtside from Select. These are all going to be from the year 2021, just to keep it all in one year. This is the 2021 Select Courtside CJ McCollum Black and Gold one-of-one, which sold raw for about $162. Okay, now we have the Courtside. Actually, these are all Courtsides too. I'm just not going to repeat that. These are all 2021 Select Courtsides. I did that specifically because there's just a lot of them. It's easier to find some data. All right, this is the Theo Maledon Rookie Black and Gold one-of-one, sold for about $305. So these ones were all the raw. Now let's see if we explore the graded cards. All right, so let's keep this data on the screen here while I talk a little bit. So what can we see from these numbers? Now the first piece of data that seems a little bit more connected are those two Isaac Okoro one-of-ones. The ungraded Black and Gold went for $1,300, and the PSA 9 graded Black Snakeskin went for $1,700, and both within about a week of each other. Now that would seem to suggest that the PSA 9 will get a small percentage value increase, but perhaps less so than higher pop cards, where the percentage difference between raw and PSA 9 would normally be higher. Now there's no other straight across direct comparisons we can make, but just by looking at the two columns, my impression is graded cards are not as big a deal when it comes to the selling price of one-of-ones. I mean, look at that Nikola Jokic Black Disco one-of-one ungraded. It went for $1,150, while the Joel Embiid PSA 9 of the same card only went for $422. That's interesting. And the raw Tyrese Halliburton Black and Gold one-of-one went for $3,200, while the James Wiseman Black Snakeskin one-of-one went for $2,000 in the PSA 9. Now in these two scenarios, the raw cards actually went for the higher price. Now Jokic and Halliburton may oftentimes go for more than Embiid and Wiseman, but not really by that much, I don't think. So these two comparisons do kind of stand out a little bit. Now I don't know for sure what this data means. You have the same data I have, so what's your opinion? Share with us in the comments below. But it seems to me like this myth has some truth behind it. It seems like the graded cards for really super low one-of-one kind of pop counts don't necessarily go for more on the open market if they're graded or if they're raw. And I guess when I really think about it, it does make sense. The supply does not change. The demand is still going to be the same. This demand is still, if you want that card, you're going to want that card, and there's only one in existence. If you don't want that card, you don't want that card. That's basically what it is. The demand is going to be basically the same. There might be a handful of people that would go a little bit higher for the graded card just because it's safe. If you buy something online and you buy a graded card, you know it has a certain level of quality. With the raw, there's a lot of possible unknowns, but at the same time, you're not going to be even looking for that card unless you want it. There's a demand for it. The demand is not necessarily going to change that much, and the supply is not changing at all. So I guess it kind of makes sense that the price value is not significantly different. All right, myth 4 we're going to look at. It says cards from the junk wax era are worthless. Now this is one I actually hear pretty regularly, and I honestly don't even have to dig that deep to figure this one out. Now on the one hand, if you're just looking at the base raw cards of different rookies from the 1990s or during some of the time of the junk wax era, yeah, the base rookie cards value is very low. I mean, even of superstar players, Shaq's rookie cards in Topps or something, going raw are very, very cheap. You go back even into the earlier 1990s into things like, I don't know, David Robinson or something, and it's like pennies for some of their rookie cards. So yes, if you look at that base stuff, perhaps the overproduction did lower the value, but that's not all that was happening during the junk wax era. And it's very clear that there are a lot of cards from this era that are extremely valuable, especially if they are graded high. If you ever follow the channel called Junk Wax Investor, which I suggest you do, I'll link it here, he outlines oftentimes what are some of the higher selling junk wax era cards at different times, and it's fascinating. There's constantly these 5-digit cards that are going for sale from the junk wax era constantly. It's not a rare thing. So I think there was this thing of overproduction happening, but there was tons of other stuff happening at the same time. So I think you have to keep that in mind. If you're gonna buy a lot, like let's say you go and you find somebody selling their old stash of sports cards and it's boxes and boxes of stuff, yeah, there's probably a ton of base commons worth 2 cents that nobody will buy, but there's enough space and enough possibility for some gems that personally I would still be interested in buying something like that and digging through it and see what I could find. Even if 90% of it is worth very little, there was still a lot of gems in the junk wax era. You just have to dig for them a little bit. And maybe that's not that different from nowadays, to be honest. And that leads us on to the next question, actually, which is related, which I hear people say a lot. I've even watched a number of YouTube videos on this topic that says we are currently in junk wax era 2.0. Let's see what that might mean. Now, there's actually different ways to look at this question. So when we think of the junk wax era, essentially we think of an era of overproduction. Is that happening now? I think the data suggests that in certain spaces and for certain kinds of cards, there is an overproduction happening. The base prism cards, the base optic cards, the base select cards, the base mosaic cards, some of these base cards are being overproduced like crazy. And you can see that from the PSA pop count numbers. And I think, that's one of the interesting things when the when PSA grading was so cheap for a period of time, people were sending in so much junk to get graded that now we can see, whoa, like there's so many cards out there. Before we didn't really know, we don't have a sense of how much is really produced to some of these base cards until we start seeing some of them come back graded. And I was watching one video that was exploring how many like just Prism, Jaw, or Zion cards were graded base stuff from their rookie year. It is crazy. I mean, that's a couple of years back now, so there's been enough time for a lot of that to come back from PSA and other places, so we can kind of get a sense for what the population was. But for Jaw and Zion, for example, just from PSA, there's been somewhere in the range of 35 to 40,000 cards graded from those guys, and that's just PSA. Then you consider that, BGS was still doing stuff back then. There's a bunch of other graders. Then the numbers just keep jumping. I don't know exactly what the pop count is there, but it's clearly huge. So just from the graded stuff, there's probably more than 50,000 easily of each of these players, their rookie cards. So that's a lot of stuff. Now, of course, there are lower numbered serial print cards. I've talked about before in my video, I'll link it above, about artificial scarcity and how I do fear that some of those color parallels are also not going to hold their value, even though those specific ones weren't overproduced. They're part of a whole series of things that was overproduced. So I do worry that some of those color parallels will go down, except for some of the iconic stuff. But that's a different conversation. You can look at the video there. Now, one of the things that this does suggest to me with all of these cards being graded over the past few years is that Junk Wax Era 2.0, there are some similarities, I suppose, between now and the Junk Wax Era, but it's a different thing. It's a different context. I've heard some people call it the Junk Slab Era, which might be, I mean, if you can buy some cards for $5, PSA 9s for $5 of some unknown player who played in the league for a couple of years, who was at the end of a rotation, or who doesn't have any other cards because they never really were, after their rookie season, they were never good enough to be in normal sets. And their rookie cards are slabbed and cost $5, $10. You can find PSA 10 cards for less than $10 in some instances, which is crazy to me. So I guess there's some reason to say that we could be entering some kind of junk slab era. It's a little bit different than the junk wax era, but it's kind of seems that way. Now, again, this definition, I don't know. It's a little wishy-washy. It's a little It's a little not clear. I wouldn't necessarily call it that. There's some differences. It's its own unique. What we're experiencing right now does have some parallels to the junk wax era, but it also has its own unique thing going on. The other thing that's a little different, I think, is people are more aware. There's more knowledge, I guess, that you could say. You know, in the junk wax era, there was more knowledge than there was in previous generations. I mean, each generation of collectors, I think, has learned from the previous generation in some ways, and some things do get repeated and don't seem to be learned as well, but generally it does seem like some learning happens. So nowadays people, you know, things about like pop count and stuff like that becomes a big part of the conversation because people know that overproduction is an issue. And so because of that, the card companies have tried some different things. Some of them are successful, some of them are not. I don't think Color Parallels is a successful one in that because of this whole artificial scarcity thing. But overall, I think that, you know, they are trying some different things. So I don't think it's going to follow the exact same patterns of the junk wax era, even though there are some similarities. Now, it's possible, saying that there's actually more cards being produced nowadays than there were during the junk wax era, possibly. But at the same time, there might be, because there's a growing number of people involved in the hobby, and there's more selection, I would say that you can still find cards that are not on the market as often, because it's all about supply and demand, really. Even if there's an overproduction, but there's more demand, then that value is not going to go down. If there's more production and there's less demand, there's less people, or the cards get out of people's price range, that's going to affect the price, and that's going to go down, which could happen. But also, when I look into the future and I see like Fanatics taking over and some of the things that seems like they're going to try to do to get a lot more people involved in the hobby, it does seem like there's going to be a greater and greater demand at times for some of the cards. So what does that mean? I don't know. I think that the overproduction, the base stuff, the base rookie cards, the base Prism rookies have taken huge dips, and I think they're not going to necessarily be able to go up that much higher. There's just too many of them. If the card's down at this price and you want this, this DeAndre Ayton Prism rookie, even though he's been doing great, his base card just keeps going down and keeps going down and keeps going down, even though I was like, what are you doing? DeAndre Ayton's awesome. But it makes sense when you think about how much supply there is on the market that if you want that card, if you want to sell that card, you have to undercut the market by a few cents. That's what most people do. You know, they see it on the market for $10, so they sell it for $9.95, and then the next person sells it for 5 cents more, less, and then you try to sell your card when there's so many on the market, so much competition. You have to undercut the market a little bit, or nobody's going to buy your card. So then the prices just keep going down. And if you're bidding on something on eBay, and you're not doing the buy it now, but you're bidding, then you're going to also bid kind of low because you know that card's going down, because there's a lot more knowledge in the hobby now, so people can see that this is going down. So they're like, okay, I'm not going to bid for this when I can see it clearly it's continuing to go down. So I think some of these base Prism, base Optic kind of rookie cards probably will go down. Now it might not for some of the cards that have a less of a supply. Some of the Noir, Flawless, Immaculate, I don't think those cards, the base rookie cards of those guys, will go down because it's the low serial numbered stuff, the shorter printed stuff is kind of baked into their existence. All right, so this has been 5 sports card myths that are common in the hobby today, and we've explored whether they're true or not. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you know any others, let me know as well. But maybe if there's other myths that are out there that we can explore, share them in the comments and we'll see what we can do in a future video. All right, that's it for now. Peace.